Hey, it's your pal Mike Shea here on, I forget what show I'm on. I'm on the Don't Split the Podcast Network doing the DM's Deep Dive. Today, I am talking with Lysa Chen. Lysa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Lysa. You might know me from some Dungeons and Dragons writing I do for the Adventurers League or Wizards of the Coast, including Dungeons of the Mad Mage coming out. I am also the community manager for the Adventurers League, D&D's official play campaign, and a new role for me, I am also the community manager of the Dungeon Masters Guild, where you can write for D&D using their settings and other cool content. And the other thing you might know me from is on this very network, Don't Split the Podcast Network. I produce and host a podcast called Behold Her, all about women in tabletop RPGs. Those are all my things.
Can you pack anything else in there? I mean, it'd be nice if you could do a little something for the D&D community somewhere in there. Yeah, I mean,
I do one or two things.
Right. This is one of the awesome things about this hobby. Is watching people rock it in and, just grab this thing with both hands and start running with it. And that's something that I think anybody who's been following you on Twitter and following everything that you've been doing has seen. And it was a pleasure to meet you at Origins.
Was it?
Well, it was a pleasure to meet you. It wasn't a pleasure to meet that red wizard that I met. But that's a whole different story that we'll save for some other time. But I wanted to bring you on the show in particular. Season 8 of Adventurers League is a very different season than all of the previous seasons that we've had in Adventurers League over the past 4 years or so. And I wanted to talk to you in particular about the changes that have occurred this season, why they occurred, and how you think it will change the face of D&D in the future. But between the time when you and I agreed to get together and talk on the show, and now is when you got your new role as a community manager for the DM's Guild. I was wondering if you'd talk a little bit about what that job is like. What do you do there?
Yes. So, I mean, there's a broad range of abilities that are in different stages of transition right now, or responsibilities, rather. I am basically the point of contact for all of the wildly creative authors who are on the Dungeon Masters Guild. So if you have a question about uploading your product or different features on the guild, I'm basically the go-to person, or I will be, for any and all questions. I've also started social pages for the Dungeon Masters Guild. So on Twitter, there's @DMS_guild. And there's also a Dungeon Masters Guild group and a Dungeon Masters Guild page for announcements or discussions, depending on how much info you want. And I'm managing all of those and just interacting with people. And it's been really fun so far. There's this very tight-knit group of community creators, mostly in this other fantastic community-made group called the Dungeon Masters Guild Creator Circle. And everyone has been really welcoming, really, really excited, and just really kind. So it's been a fun gig so far.
That's awesome. And I imagine you're working with a lot of folks that you have worked with previously in the past, because you are an accomplished DM's Guild author yourself, and you're a guild adept, right? You're one of the members of the guild adept writers, and as is our boss here at the station, James Picasso.
Yeah.
So I imagine you get to interact with them as well in that regard. So
I do. Everyone, all the guild adepts and also folks on Adventurers League are really excited that it's kind of synergizes with the other stuff that I do. I get to be like extra helpful for everybody. But I've also just been really involved in the creator community in general. So even just the other Dungeon Masters Guild authors are folks that I know. And I won't name him, but one of them was my first email where I was like, hey, you need the logo on your cover. You're missing that. And he was very embarrassed and asked if he was the first person I had to scold. And he said he'd wear it as a badge of honor.
Did his first name start with initials?
We'll say his first name begins with an E.
Oh, okay. Not MT Black then.
Oh, no.
All right. So normally on this show, we start off with 3 tips, and we will get to those 3 tips. But I wanted to start off with a summary for people who may not be, hip deep into the D&D Adventurers League about what specifically has changed between season 8 and the previous seasons of the Adventures League? Could you summarize that for us?
Yes, I would say that the major changes are a change in the reward system and also a change in the formatting of adventures. So for the reward system, instead of using XP, where you murder a monster, you get their XP, you add that all up, and that's how you level. We're using advancement checkpoints, which if you're using hardcover books or you are using older modules from previous seasons are based on time. If you're using the season 8 content, it becomes based on objectives. So you are given a goal, and if you accomplish that, no matter how you accomplish it, you get an advancement checkpoint. And it starts out as 4 advancement checkpoints to level, and then it becomes 8. Instead of earning gold through adventuring, folks earn gold as they level up. And instead of finding a magical item and everyone's sort of fighting over that magical item, instead, folks now unlock an item and add it to like their unlock list. And they use treasure checkpoints that they earn to purchase whichever unlocked items they would like. That way you can kind of customize exactly what your character wants. And if someone snagged an item, then you can still get it, which is nice. So those are the reward changes. For the adventure formats, we've gone from like if someone's read an Adventures League adventure, it basically has like exactly what happens in the scene. Usually there's box text, and it gives you examples of what players might do or what they're expected to do. It could be one path, and it gives you like bullet points of how to deal with that or what information they're told by an NPC. Instead, we're going to a more open-ended format, which is more of a toolkit. So you might be given a scene, and you might have the NPCs who are in that scene, and the DM is detailed what their motivations are. But aside from that, players are going in with a goal they have to accomplish, but no set path of how they have to do that necessarily. So more open-ended adventuring rather than like a one path, or I guess railroad is usually the term. So I'd say those are the 2 major buckets of changes in season 8.
Yeah, those are very interesting, and I'm glad you specifically talked about the adventure. I think everyone's focused on the rewards. Well, not everyone. I think many people are focused on the rewards, and not enough people are thinking about that change in adventure. And so I have 2 Adventures League adventures that I've written in the past, and both of them were designed exactly like you described them originally. That I have like combat scene in the beginning, then exploration scene, or NPC interaction scene, and then exploration scene, and maybe some small combats, and then a big combat at the end. And I knew that was how it was going to go, and then it was sort of filling in the blanks. And that is very different from the idea of here's a situation that's occurring, here are objectives that you need to meet. You decide if you're going to explore your way through it, or talk your way through it, or fight your way through it, and reach those objectives. So I'm very interested. The first adventure, and you're going to have to remind me, it was like a 0-0 adventure.
The Once in Waterdeep by
Right.
Will Doyle.
Yes. So that one, like I read it, and my eyes are wide open the whole time I'm reading it, as this really wild idea of essentially creating a session 0 in a single session D&D game, right? Where the players are involved in what's going to happen in that adventure, and who the antagonist is and what they desire and everything. It's just a really wild way to look at an adventure. Is that kind of the format, or was that one really a special one?
I would say that one was really a special one. Will had this idea where he felt like he could write a really different type of introductory adventure, and he totally did. I've heard a lot of really amazing feedback about how fun that is, especially the like creative workshop you do at the beginning with the players. But this idea that you could really approach an encounter any way that you want, that is consistent across all of them. Like I think in Will's adventures, you even see there's a sidebar. It's more of a footer where it details combat, exploration, social, the pillars of play, and little bits of detail on what you might do as a DM if players try to approach a situation with that pillar of play.
Mhm.
And that is consistent. And that is a new feature that we've added to all adventures, which is, I think, probably what I'm most excited about, because it forces the writer to think about the same scene in a lot of different ways, to try to write a scene that can be resolved in different ways.
Yeah, I noticed that. So MT Black, who we were just joking about before, wrote a new DM Guild Adept adventure, like Blue Alley or something like that, right? And I was reading that yesterday, and yeah, I saw that it had these very clear kind of pillar descriptions throughout, and I went, "Huh, that's a very interesting design thing," and it looks like a great adventure. I'm eager to read it more and to run it. So now that we've kind of outlined the changes that have occurred in season 8, what are your top 3 tips for dungeon masters that are planning to run season 8 adventures?
Yeah, I wrote little notes. I'm gonna pull them up so I don't forget. Okay, so my 3 tips. My first one would be that if you're going to run a season 8 module, I definitely make sure that you read it ahead of time. It'll be less prep than reading some of the old adventures ahead of time, because with the nature of you're just kind of getting these tools that you use in a scene, it's less to read. So it should be easier, but because it's open-ended, I would make sure you're familiar with all of the different elements in the story. And as my second tip, kind of building off of that, is as you're getting used to the new format and you're prepping these adventures, I'd familiarize yourself with the tools that are available. So knowing that sidebar is on the bottom of the page, that can help you if someone goes in this crazy direction and starts having a conversation with the bad guy instead of fighting them. If that takes you off guard, there's tips there. Also, in the appendix, every adventure has a list of NPCs and locations that show up in the adventure with the personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws there. So I would actually make sure you print that and don't staple it to the rest of the adventure, so you can always have that on the side. And then I think if you do those 2 parts well, then my third tip should be pretty easy, which is to go into the adventure with an open mind, letting the players really guide the direction of the adventure, and to embrace the improv that comes with that, embrace the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so I'm splitting up the 3 tips here 2 different ways. What 3 tips do you have for players that are going to be either starting with season 8 or previous Adventures League players who are now going to be playing season 8 adventures?
Yeah, I would definitely, just from a rules standpoint, I would get to know the new reward system, get to know advancement checkpoints. There's a little bit of housekeeping that the player becomes in charge of. For example, with downtime days, you automatically get 5 every time you earn 2 advancement checkpoints, that sort of thing. Aside from rules things, I would take advantage of the new format of season 8 adventures and allow yourself to feel less constrained. I feel like a lot of Adventurers League players get used to feeling like, oh, well, there's a certain way I'm expected to go through this adventure, so I'm just going to do that. If you want to talk to the crazy goblins, talk to the crazy goblins, or go exploring and poking around in the different areas that you meet. It's possible the writer wrote in some little exploration features. Just feel less constrained. And then my third tip, and this is another rules thing just because I've noticed it pop up a lot already on the Facebook group. When you unlock your items, make sure you get those details about rarity and what magic item table it is on from your DM before you leave the table. We get a lot of questions, like if you don't have the Dungeon Master's Guide, it's hard to find that information elsewhere. So definitely make sure that you ask for that at the end of your adventure.
Those are good tips. So looking at the Facebook group since the release, it's been really quiet there. I noticed, like, nobody's really saying very much. Is that right? Is that the experience?
It does
Yeah.
not feel like that
Does
because
not? What? Yeah.
Alan and I have so many posts
I
to
kid.
sift through.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So there's like 1,000 comments on every post.
Yeah, there's like a bajillion comments.
Yeah.
People
Like
are real
4 times
chatty.
Yeah, I was being sarcastic. So
Dry
and it
humor.
seems like and you have read way more of them than I have. So and I didn't do my normal deep scientific look because I'm not downloading 1,000 Facebook comments. It seems like there's little controversy over the experience changes. You know, for the most part, it feels like people are fine with that, and I think it's a really good change. There's moderate controversy for the magic item stuff. Like some people feel like it breaks away from the story of the game to essentially unlock an item. You know, feels very Warcraft-like rather than a pile of loot opens up and there's a sword. Who wants a sword, right? And instead it's like, well, a sword may drop and no one actually gets it because no one has the points, right? And they unlock it, but no one actually picks it up. But it also, and then there's a bunch of people who are mad that you're taking away their dual wielding Harzawan shield guardian guys.
Oh yeah, those problematic items.
Right. I guess that got like, why are you taking away my stuff? So, sorry, I'm being a jerk to the people who are sad about their Harzawan. But then there's probably one of the strongest controversies that I hear is about gold and the use of gold and treasure. And you know, having read about it for weeks and kind of thinking about it and talking to my wife about it. My wife is also a big Adventures. Well, we both play in Adventures League at conventions and stuff like that. And so we're familiar with it, and both of us were kind of thinking about the gold side of it, and it makes perfect sense. Like I don't really, it's not for me. It's not the end of the world, but it also feels like that one of the key motivators for adventures is earning gold. Like the big joke is you sit down with your quest NPC and he says, I need you to go to the Goblin Caves and pick up the weird idol that they stole, and I'll pay you 50 gold. And you all go, each? Right. Yeah. And now like that it feels like there's either two ways that conversation now goes. Either the quest giver says something on the order of like, you will get your level allotment of gold if you go down there and get the idol, or they have an abstract amount like you will get 50 gold each, but you don't actually get the 50 gold. You'll get the 50 gold when you level.
Yeah.
So how, now that it's tied to the level, and now that is there, how is that affecting the motivation, particularly in writing about Season 8 adventures? How is that being taken into account in adventures, and how will it be taken into account when we're running old adventures?
Yeah, so for old adventures, we're not going back and editing every adventure season 1 through 7, unfortunately. So there is a little bit of where the gold becomes abstracted, or if I were the dungeon master, I might try and like just change what the hook is so that we're not mentioning it, the gold piece, just because otherwise it doesn't make so much sense during the game. For future adventures, I know that a lot of us have been using the unlocked magic item as the motivator. But I also think that there's a lot of possibility for players to take on what their own reasons are for adventuring. I feel like gold is not the most creative reason. There's so many other possibilities. You could be searching for knowledge. You could be trying to build a name for yourself as an adventurer. Maybe you're not the nicest adventurer and you're trying to build people's trust, but secretly you're lawful evil. There is like a lot of fun creative reasons that you can come up with your own character, and I'd love to see people do more of that than necessarily feel like they only are adventuring to earn that gold.
Was there a reason that gold, this is a secret question that you didn't know about, so but following on the gold discussion, is there a reason that gold wasn't awarded like the experience point thing was rewarded, where you earned it per hour rather than earning it at a level?
Honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. I can speak to some of the reasons why gold was reduced so drastically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of the reward changes, the format changes, those are more linked to making sure that Adventurers League is rewarding more styles of play.
Mm-hmm.
The gold in particular, I feel like, was an answer to people saying, I have so much gold. I have a ridiculous amount of gold. I could pay for everybody to live like kings across all of the Forgotten Realms. But also people saying, D&D doesn't feel, in the Adventures League, doesn't feel dangerous. I can just pop back up with magic and with spells that will bring me back. And limiting gold kind of addresses both of those. Now, I will say you're right. That's probably the most controversial change that we made, especially in regards to classes like wizards and clerics, who have those spell components. So we'll see how it goes. I do know that we sort of tested out different player progressions with those classes to make sure they were feasible. And like wizards, you have to be a little more selective about spells that you copy and that sort of thing. But in response to that, we did create the option for you to trade in your treasure checkpoints for gold. If having extra gold is really important to you, you do have that option.
Yeah, and so I think that this is an important consideration, particularly because I mean you're the face of the Adventurers League in all of these various forums and on Twitter and everything like that. That the baseline for this started in Xanathar's guide, right?
Yes.
Like the end of Xanathar's guide had sort of the initial baseline set of organized play rules, and correct me if I misstate how this occurred from looking from the outside in.
Mm-hmm.
That essentially it was the baseline was started with those rules, and then the Adventurers League administrators, yourself included, and wizards, Chris Lindsay in particular, got together and said, let's rotate on this a little bit, and how do we tweak it so that it sort of fits better with the Adventurers League. But
Absolutely.
it's not like you guys had the opportunity to start from scratch and say, yeah, that's fine what's in Xanathar's guide, but we're not going there. We're going to go do this, we're going to do these other things, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, there were, like, even as we were sort of workshopping and figuring out how to make the rules work for Adventurers League IRL, there were, like, restraints, like certain things we couldn't change.
Mm-hmm.
I know, like, at first, we really, really, really did not want to put a price on treasure checkpoints. Part of that being that once they have a value, then all the things you can buy with treasure checkpoints sort of get this weird value that might not actually equal what their gold value is. There are a few people on our Facebook page who've pointed that out.
Yeah, like Harzalon's worth 2,000 gold, and you're like, really?
Yeah.
It's a legendary artifact.
Yeah. But we were able to make that compromise because there was such a vocal response to the gold amount.
Yeah, and to me, especially because I primarily DM, and I've seen a lot of what can happen when the gold value is unrestrained, and it can be spent on things like, well, why can't I buy 500 healing potions?
Mm-hmm.
I'll just have a bag full of them, and I never have to worry about resting again. I'm just downing healing potions and leaving broken bottles behind me through every dungeon. Or Hero's Feast is one of my least favorite spells, right?
Yeah.
If you can cast Hero's Feast as often as you want, that's a challenge, right? But when 1,000 gold is really hard to come by, you're not going to drop Hero's Feast unless you absolutely know you're facing an ancient green dragon.
Yeah.
I presume I don't play high tier stuff that often, so I don't see simulacrums and other sort of odd high level wizard stuff that I think can have a big effect in Adventurers League, and from what I hear, have had an effect at least in tier 4 games.
Yeah.
So that the idea that sort of rebalancing the gold in value, and again, not playing a wizard and not being super active in Adventurers League, and certainly not being that active in high tier Adventurers League, didn't bother me as much. But I was like, that idea of the motivation, like I don't know how that's going to play out. Like, as a DM, I don't know how I would run that if money isn't one of, like, I agree with you that it's great to have a whole bunch of sort of intrinsic motivators to kind of get people and get adventurers motivated to go do an adventure. But we all know that, like, the baseline for Dungeons and Dragons is some crusty guy gives you a bag of gold in order to go down to the basement and kill the rats, right? Like, so it's interesting how that dynamic will change, and I'm kind of interested to see how it plays out.
Yeah, me too. I feel like there's those two responses that we got. Folks who really liked gold for those like in character motivators, and then folks who like mechanically needed the gold to feel like they can do the things they want their class to do. Right. The change was drastic, so I understand why folks reacted strongly. But so far we're getting feedback from people who are like, oh, it doesn't feel as different as I thought it was going to feel. And I hope as we go through season 8, we find that's the case, especially as like we've just had Will's Adventure release to the general public. Hopefully as more of the adventures release, we get that same reaction.
Yeah, and I bet you a few conventions will help, right? Like once you can pile in lots and lots of data from veteran groups and new players all together in these big circumstances, you can go, talk to David Christ at Baldwin and say, hey, so how's it working out? Like, what kind of feedback are you getting in your little forms? And it's just on the back, it's like 0000 and gold, right? Where's my gold?
Oh gosh, I hope not.
So we'll see. So moving along, in a previous episode of the deep dive, we talked to Paige Lightman, who runs the Adventures League stuff at Dragon Con, I believe, and has written D&D Adventures League Adventures and CCC Concreated Adventures for Adventures League. And our primary talk there, you've seen, I presume you've seen her posts with sort of the dichotomy, the Venn diagram. I can't do it without touching my mic. The Venn diagram of and I guess in her case it was sort of two normal distributions of people that are leaning more towards story and people that are leaning more towards combat. And the conversation was around the idea that in Adventures League you really have both kind of people. And I heard some anecdotal but interesting feedback at Gen Con from one of the people who wrote this. I'm going to narrow it down to there's only 3. One of the people who wrote the D&D Open, and who said that many people who ran the Open loved it, right? And I thought it was the best D&D game I've ever played.
The most fun I've had DMing ever.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. But then there were other people who were like, what the hell is this? Like, this isn't a D&D game. This is us all playing make-believe, was apparently one of the pieces of feedback. I don't know if that was 1% of the feedback or 50% of the feedback. I have no idea. But it kind of showed this big drastic difference in what players are coming to the Adventures League with. So now that we're seeing, so season 8 definitely feels like it's got an opinion about this, right? The design of season 8 has an opinion about this. So how, and you already talked a little bit about the adventures and how they are, leaning towards that idea that you can approach them how you want. But in the discussion, how is that being discussed internally among the team? And sort of what's the general thought about how season 8 is going to affect that dichotomy of players?
Yeah.
That's a terribly worded question.
No, I think I get what you're saying. It's always really interesting to me when we talk about how Adventurers League maybe has a reputation for being very tactical, or when we talk about the extreme dichotomy, because in my experience playing at conventions, playing in my local groups, there are people who are tactical, but at the same time love role-playing their characters, love doing shenanigans, trying to talk their way through things, solve things creatively. So that's been my personal experience. And I feel like the Adventurers League, like any other place, you're going to find groups that have different styles of play than you do necessarily. And in D&D in general, it's you find your people who like to play the way you like to play, so you have just like a fun game of D&D exactly like you like to D&D. I guess what's the struggle with Adventurers League, especially at a convention, is that sometimes you sit with a completely random group of folks, and so you might have someone who really likes solving things peacefully and talking with someone who really likes to stab stuff at the same table. I mean, I think we like you said, we are trying to address it a little bit with the design, but I also think that hmm, that's maybe something that just intrinsically a part of Adventurers League when you are going to get any random group of folks together. I think our hope is that as we're making the social pillar and the exploration pillar more explicit in adventures, forcing designers to think about every situation that way, that people as players will start to feel like they can explore things aside from combat. And hopefully embrace that. And we're sort of changing the culture of Adventurers League, and that's not something that happens overnight. So really interested in seeing how season 8 is received and how what that means for our community.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I went to Gen Con and played in a whole series of Adventures League. Well, yeah, a series of Adventures League adventures. They were the Moonshea series that Bobbin Games put together. And the tables I had were definitely DMs who are much more focused on tactical combat than the story of the adventure. And it was funny because I mean, like in the 4th edition days, I liked tactical combat way more than anything else. Like that was what I wanted to watch my characters fight stuff and kill it and be efficient at it. And the story was the thin line of sinew that connected together these 3 big battles that you'd fight in a 4-hour period. And I have, my opinion on it has changed. And the benchmark for me that like sometimes I say like, well, did it change or am I just wanting it to change? But then, I played 8 hours at that D&D Open and we fought one guy and that fight took 5 minutes and we shouldn't have done it at all. Right. And I still had a hell of a great time. I just loved it. So that idea that kind of taking, stepping back and so Mike Merles, when he was on the deep dive, mentioned this as well, that, taking this less tactically focused look at the game and thinking about it at a higher level and why are we doing this and what are the other options that are there and where else can we go? It'll be interesting because, there are a lot of people who are deeply entrenched in Adventures League and have been playing since, Living Greyhawk, right? They've been playing forever. Who really like the tactical, the tactical aspect to it. And it will be interesting how they will approach that. Will they get frustrated by the fact that like, I want to see my character cast awesome spells and this jerk on the left keeps negotiating his way through every fight. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And it's a dichotomy that I have seen at the table. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And my mind goes back to 4th edition where they had these things called lair assaults. Where a lair assault was like a 2-hour or 1 or 2 hour D&D game that was just a big fight, and it was really hard, and there was all kinds of tactical stuff that went on, and it'd be interesting to see is that something that's going to happen where if you really just want to fight stuff, we have a little table over here, or a few tables over here where you will,
it would be cool.
Fight a series of fights. Yeah,
it would be cool if conventions could have like a matchmaking service for whatever party you join.
Right.
That would be cool. While you're talking, you mentioned the Open, and I feel like part of what made the Open so fun was that it was written really well. I don't want to make it sound like we weren't given information, but it was also written in a way where you don't necessarily know what the players are going to do. So it prepares you to improvise as the DM. So when you're having, how long is the Open? Like 8 hours?
It was 9 hours with a dinner break.
Yeah. When you're playing for 8-9 hours and you're having social interactions, you're like actually you're playing make-believe, like you're actually having those conversations instead of reading off a list of bullet points of the information the character can give you. Which I've been at some Adventures League tables where the DM will literally just read all the bullet points, like you don't even talk to the person, which have been unfortunate experiences. I think because DMs are given the NPCs' motivations and their personalities and not a list of bullet points, maybe some ideas of the general information that they know, social interactions in these new adventures will feel actually more dynamic rather than stagnant, and maybe that'll make that a more attractive pillar of play for some people who haven't been interested in that before.
Yeah, Michelle and I are both going to Winter Fantasy next year, so excited. I think I don't know, is that the first big con? I guess are there a couple other conventions? Oh, no, so PAX Unplugged is going to have stuff,
PAX
right?
Unplugged, Game Hole will have a
Yeah, right.
lot. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the
But Winter
good.
Fantasy will be fun.
So then the bugs will be worked out by the time Winter
Yeah.
Fantasy happens. But that for us is like our first big con after season 8 has been out, where we'll get to see what it's like, and so I'm excited about that. So now one other big change that's happened is the release of Eberron, and Eberron as a world that people can write for in the DMs Guild, and I believe Eberron Legal D&D Adventures League adventures, right?
Yes.
Are there any out now?
Yes. There is a packet of encounters in Sharn. So they're like shorter encounters, not full adventures, that you can play. And we also just started to release an adventure path that James Intricasso of Don't Split the Podcast Network is project managing. And the first one, which is called The Past is All That's Past is Prologue, I believe, by Alan Patrick. That just came out today. And it is AL legal for the Eberron campaign, and you play it with pre-gens, and it's designed to help you learn some of the lore of Eberron.
That's right. It's a level 0 adventure,
level
right?
0 pre-gens, which I think is a really cool idea. I am, of all the guild adepts and the admins, I mean, I'm the newest to D&D in general. So with 5th edition being my first edition, I don't know a lot about Eberron. So I was talking to Alan about it, and he said, yeah, Eberron has a lot of lore, so that can be intimidating. Let's make an adventure that you just play it and learn it, and then it's not intimidating. So I haven't had a chance to read his yet. I'm really excited to, though. It seems to be doing really well on the Dungeon Masters Guild, so that's kind of cool to see that people are really excited about the Eberron campaign.
So you may not be able to mention this, and if you can't, you just say sorry, I can't say anything about it. Did Wizards of the Coast come to you guys saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and release Eberron to the DMs Guild, and or how did that occur?
We were told ahead of time that this would be happening. And we knew that it would be a separate Adventurers League campaign, although compared to the Forgotten Realms campaign, it's pretty light. The packet of rules is similar, definitely based off of the Forgotten Realms rules, slight differences. And we knew that we wanted the AL legal content to be written by guild adepts. So that is kind of like a cool, different way, or at least how we're starting to create AL legal content for Eberron.
So I will put in this plug now, since I have you here. If you guys are considering, if you hear anything about Dark Sun being the same way, and if you do not bring Teos Abadia into the fold for Dark Sun, a great injustice in the world will have occurred. So he is all about Dark Sun and has did tremendous work with the Dark Sun, organized play program, Ashes of Athos, that happened a few years ago. So I'm giving it to you so you can feed it into the communication pipeline should it ever occur.
Duly noted.
Do you know Teos? Have you?
Yeah.
Oh man, what an awesome guy. So I'm just plugging for him. I, on the other hand, don't know anything about anything, so don't talk to me about it. I don't know. There's like sand. I think there's sand in there. That's as much about Dark Sun as I know. So when we look at Eberron, the characters that are created for Eberron are separate from the characters that exist in the Forgotten Realms.
Totally separate, live in a different world.
So for Eberron is the only place currently where it is every character that's playing in it is a season 8 legal character, period. They will never have converted any of their stuff over.
Correct.
And that's different than Forgotten Realms, right? Like in Forgotten Realms, if you're playing tier 2, 3, or 4, presumably you might be carrying over a whole lot of gold that you had from previous stuff.
Yes.
So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out as well. Will there be a great imbalance in Forgotten Realms because you'll have pre-season 8 with post-season 8 people?
Some people said we should have done just a hard reset. I don't know. I feel like
it was enough trauma.
Yeah.
It was already enough trauma. Don't hurt any.
Yeah.
Don't hurt anybody. But yeah, so is there any concern about sort of splitting the player base up by the Eberron people on one side. There's all these legends about in second edition when they created all of these game worlds, and they had Planescape and Spelljammer and Greyhawk and Forgotten Realms, and the name goes on and on. That they ended up Ravenloft, right? They had all these different worlds, and they felt like they split the entire market up into 9 games instead of 1. And it was like the Ravenloft people didn't want to have anything to do with the Forgotten Realms people, who didn't want to have anything to do with the Spelljammer people. Is there now? I don't imagine it's going to be anywhere near like Wizards has learned a lot since then. But is there a worry that in Adventurers League there's sort of like the Eberron people are on one side and the Forgotten Realms people are on another? Is that a concern, or you'll see how it goes?
I mean, it's so new. It's really hard to say. I will say no one's really talked about it behind the scenes as a major concern. I think we're just really... A lot of the AL admins love Eberron. So I think mostly there's just been a lot of excitement about the new campaign and being able to write for the Eberron setting. So I wouldn't say that's a big concern, no.
Okay, yeah, it'd be interesting. I'm interested to see that. My wife and I have played Eberron before, so we're both excited to play in Eberron, and I'm kind of excited to start in a whole new. I was very excited to start in the Moonshays with a brand new character that was just driven on the Moonshays, and I had 5 terrible games. So now I'm like, well,
oh no,
maybe I'll go with Eberron, and maybe that'll be more interesting. So I have a softball question and a hardball question. Which one do you want?
Let's do the hardball question.
The hardball.
Oh no, let's roll.
Okay.
I don't know what this number will mean to you, but 6.
All right, hardball.
Okay.
Question. So Mike Mearls, one of the things I love about Mike Mearls is he posts really interesting, really controversial tweets sometimes. And I love to just like, I guess I'm an agent of chaos, and I love to watch like these sort of explosions of, again, this giant culture shift that I think is occurring in D&D. And he said one in particular. I think I posted a tweet that had something to do with the Adventurers League. Oh, I remember what it was. I was happy with the fact there were people that were upset with the fact that hardback adventures really didn't follow the guidelines that Adventurers League adventures typically follow, but were still AL legal. And they said, like, why is Wizards not writing these things to be more in line with the standard Adventurers League format? And I said, I don't want hardback adventures. I'm glad they don't. Like, like for me, I like that hardback. I don't want to see the creators of hardback adventures restrained by the Adventurers League rule set, because it's like 25% of player base and 75% are playing home games. So that's a, questionable statistic. Anyway, in response, Mike Mearls said the following. Our research has shown that the way RPGs are played in RPGA-style OP programs, organized play programs, or at least how they are perceived to be played, is pretty unpopular with people who want to play RPGs. And then somebody asked him, like, wow, can you unpack that a little bit? Like, that's quite a statement. And his next tweet, one of the tweets, he asked, like, why is that the case? Why do they feel that way? And he said that the overarching feel is that player actions don't affect the game world, and DMs are bound by the rules instead of running a fun game. Did you see that when it occurred?
Yes.
What was your reaction to that?
Mike is tweeting again. No, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily unfair to say that, especially it's how official play is perceived. I'd say how it's perceived is definitely that, like, dungeon masters they can't modify the adventure at all. They have to play it exactly as is, so everyone gets the same experience. Some DMs are scared even to modify the combats because they don't want someone to think they got an unfair fight. And again, this reputation that it is very combat tactics heavy. And like I said, that hasn't been my experience, but I think that is how it is perceived. I also think the Adventurers League is very different, because if you're playing a hardcover adventure, I feel like a lot of people have a character they build just for that adventure, and they play that hardcover adventure, and then the next campaign they make a new character. And that's not the case in Adventurers League. You can always have your character and take them to different books. And I think when you just have that one shift where you can carry on that character, there have to be other rules to kind of keep things fair.
Yeah, and it changes very much the story at that point.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, if every character has a story, but my character's story arc is not parallel to anyone else's because of the different adventures my character has played compared to everyone else, where if we have 5 people that are all building characters and playing through Tomb of Annihilation, we've all shared that one adventure. And like you say, the characters are written for Tomb of Annihilation. All of their experiences are with these same people in Tomb of Annihilation, and then they're all dead at the end of Tomb of Annihilation.
Or they're alive and they sold all their artifacts in Port Nyanzaru and they've got all of the gold. There's reasons why we're not letting you necessarily carry that. So. Keep carrying that. Yeah, or not.
Maybe yours was different than mine's going to be.
Half my monger. So
yeah. So there were 2 specific things that Mike brought up, and one was what you just talked about, that the agency of DMs to run a fun game. I have 2 anecdotes that kind of supported that. In one case, I was DMing an Adventurers League adventure, and I changed the spell lineup of one of the casters that they were facing. Mm-hmm. And one of the players said, "That's not the spells that he's got in the module. He's got these spells." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "No, he doesn't." And he's like, "You're not even playing the mod," was his reaction to it. And I was like, "Well, I'm not a spreadsheet. Like, you can go home and play by yourself."
Yeah, I mean, you are, even in previous rules, you were allowed to make that
right.
change.
Yeah, right, so, right, yeah. Right. You were, but yeah, he was upset by that. But I was also upset by the fact, like, how did you know exactly what spells he had? Mm-hmm. And then in other ones, I've definitely played at tables where like the game went south and nobody was really having a particularly good time, and I get real grumpy, and the DM kind of shrugs and says, "Well, that's how the adventure's written," and you're like, "You have full authority to make a fun game." Like,
yeah. And so again, I know I keep going back to the new format, but it's the thing I'm most excited about for season 8, because it's like you're just given a toolkit of what the adventure is. We're really empowering DMs a lot more to shape the adventure to however the players want it to be and bring their own creativity to it, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, maybe the difference now will be that they have to. Yeah. Right, like before they could just follow the adventure straight through and just go, "Well, sorry, that's the way it's run." And now they're like, "No, you're going to have to cook."
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, at Queen City Conquest, I roomed with someone who's really involved in the indie RPG industry. I mean, we're talking about the Adventurers League changes. He was really curious, what was I going to say? Oh, yes. I was talking to him about the XP changes to advancement checkpoints and how for the Season 8 modules, they're objective-based, and you can really go about solving those objectives any way that you want. It's completely open-ended. And he said that actually made him like Adventurers League more than typical D&D, because coming from like an indie RPG standpoint, he felt like D&D, it's all about just killing monsters and getting XP to get to the next level. And he cited some sort of, I think a webcomic where someone goes into a tavern and is like, "Everybody run! There's adventurers coming and they just need 10 more XP." Yeah, so he said that he loved coming from games where you really can approach things anyway, and that's just the norm, that he really loved that Adventurers League made that change. So that was kind of cool to hear that from someone who isn't typically a D&D person.
Yeah, I think that change of going to a checkpoint system instead of experience points, that's one where I think Adventurers League is actually catching up to the rest of the world. Because I ran a survey about this. I was curious. I don't remember why I did it, but I did a survey recently on Twitter, which has all the biases of the fact that it's people that follow me, that self-selection bias and all that crap. But we got 2,500 responses to it on how do dungeon masters use, how do they level up characters? And only 25% of them use experience points. And 75% of them are using either story-based leveling, session-based leveling, or some other leveling system. So I thought that was interesting. And a lot of people are like, wow, that a lot of people were surprised by that. I wasn't, because it's so much easier. Like, I don't know why anybody calculates experience points, but I remember what it was. People, in a book I wrote, one of the I wrote a book about lazy dungeon mastering and said, one lazy trick is just level them when they want to level. Level them when it makes sense. Don't calculate experience points. It's like doing income taxes.
Mhm.
And somebody said like, well, is that normal or whatever? I said, I don't know. Like, find out if it's normal. So that's one where I think like the rest of the world has kind of moved that way. And now Adventures League is caught up there as well. So I think that's interesting. So I'll ask the softball question, which isn't really much of a softball question, but it's not as much as saying.
Oh no, you tricked me.
Yeah. How is streaming D&D? How does the world of streaming D&D? It's this great big explosion in popularity these days. How has that changed how the admins are viewing the Adventurers League?
I mean, I can speak for myself. And when I was still organizing Adventures League at my friendly local game store, we would get so many new people who came in, who found us on Meetup, or they just came to the store to ask like if there were D&D games to play. And I would say a total, like, I guess I'm making this number up in my head, but it feels right. 25% of them were maybe people who used to play Dungeons and Dragons or have continued to play Dungeons and Dragons, and they were looking for another place to do that. 75% came in saying, I watched Critical Role, and all my friends watch Critical Role, and we really want to play Dungeons and Dragons, but none of us have any clue how to actually play. Can you teach me? And so those people would be coming in having seen how a streaming show plays D&D, and they'd be learning the rules at Adventurers League, which I think is a great way to learn the core rules because it's all like legal, right? Rules as written,
Right.
and then you can modify however you want. But they're coming with the approach that they've seen in streaming shows. So they come in hitting the ground running, role playing their characters. They all have these long backstories they're really shy to share. I was the same. I mean, I played Dungeons and Dragons because I watched Critical Role, so it didn't surprise me that there were so many people who are the same. And then you just you get that influx of people who have this play style because it's what attracted them to the game in the first place. Now, I'd say maybe like half of those people stayed and played D&D or at Adventurers League, and the other half went home with the confidence that they knew the rules enough to DM so they could teach their friends how to play and run a home game, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, I think it was Greg Tito who he wrote in an article, or he was interviewed for an article, and said that for the first time ever, more people are learning about D&D through streaming shows than any other way. And that's the first time in the entire history of the game where there's been any other source of learning about D&D higher than friends and family. Like learning from friends and family was the number one way for literally 50 years, 40 years. And now it's shifted to learning from streaming. And I imagine that a lot of people coming to the Adventures League, like you say, are coming like, hey, I saw this and I have no idea where to play and nobody else around me that plays, but I want to learn how to play. So I'll go to a game shop and learn.
Yeah.
So I've hogged you completely in this. We like to get questions from our audience, and normally it's half the show, but now we're going to have to
okay.
So, but I had too many questions myself. We have our guardian angel, Rudy Basso, is here monitoring questions. He's the one that runs this whole show. Rudy, what questions do you have for Lysa tonight?
Hello. I have a couple. Yes, I'm here. Just wanted to say thank you also to D&D for hosting us. Very delightful thing to see happen.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
So we have a few questions. Also, I wanted to say, if you're doing Dark Sun, don't forget Robert Aducci. That guy is Robert a huge Aducci's Dark Sun guy. Him and Teos are the two fathers of Dark Sun in my eyes.
Everyone just getting their Dark Sun plugs in. Any other requests?
Write them down. Write those two down.
Just wanted to throw it out. Okay, first off, from Twitter, question. With the this is Mason is the evil twin. With the emphasis on role-playing and exploring in Season 8, what suggestions do you have for helping characters who come in mid-stream and have missed the previous adventures?
I'm not sure. So is he asking, like, if you come in, like, mid-season to a table where people have been exploring together?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's nothing to stop you from doing, like, a little bit of introductory role play with folks at a table. So that is always fun. Something else I really like to do, I do it a lot when I play test adventures, actually, or if I get a totally random group of people and the adventure feels like,
it makes sense for them to have known each other for a while. I make folks do introductions where you describe your character and what they look like and their name and personality and everything. And then when you go, you say some sort of memory you have or bond that you have with the person who introduced themselves right before you. And then the last person, the first person does. I don't know if that made sense. Did that sort of make sense? Yeah. So it kind of borrowing from Dungeon World, where you create a bond or link with other characters. That's fun because then when you play the adventure, you can kind of bring that up and play off of that. Creates lots of inside jokes.
Excellent. Rudy, what else you have?
From Shortman Ian on in chat, are there any plans by Adventurers League to implement new player tables at cons for first-time players who are interested in D&D? First-time players only.
Yeah. So our convention presence, there's always like either groups or individuals who take the lead and organize Adventurers League for conventions. And we completely depend on the amazing, amazing organizers we have all over the world. And I know that there are a number of folks who already are implementing new player tables. Usually they'll run the season introductory adventures, especially those that were split up into little 1-hour bits. Sometimes new people kind of want to get in, try it for an hour, and then if they like it, they come back later and try to do the other 4 adventures or mini adventures. But I think that's a great idea. It's always fun to learn with folks because then it's not so intimidating. You know, everybody's new.
Excellent. Rudy, what else you got?
Just one more, again from Shortman Ian. There can be a lot of negativity going around, especially when big changes happen. But what are some of the positive things that you see as you travel to cons and meet the players of this amazing game? And Mike, you answer this too.
Oh my goodness. I love talking to people about their characters and hearing about their backstories and different things they've incorporated from adventures that they've played into like the core of their character. I think that is one of the best parts of Adventurers League, that your character is yours and you can just keep playing them. They really build these really rich lives behind them. Almost every con I go to, folks will come up to me and make sure I know that they recognize the things I do in the community, and that always makes me feel so incredibly good, especially at Queen City Conquest. A lot of folks are coming up and saying, I know there's a lot of negativity about Season 8, but I love the changes, or I was grumpy about some things, but I'm still playing, and it's not so bad so far. And, or just, like, I hope you know that there's a lot of people who support everything that the admins do. So just the community is just a bunch of nice, awesome people who have the same exact hobby that I do. So I just love meeting the people.
Say that question again, just so I make sure I'm answering the right thing.
What are all the positive things you see at conventions from the players that you meet?
So I'm kind of an introvert, so like my favorite part of conventions are when I get to hang out with people like like Rudy Basso and James Intercasso and Teos and other folks, and get to play with people I don't normally get to play with. So I think by far the energy of an open or of an epic, Paige Lightman brought this up as well, that an Adventurers League adventure, like when you go to a game shop and you sit down with people and you play an adventure with Adventurers League, is a good way to get your D&D on, but it's probably not as tightly knit as playing with your friends at home, that with characters that you built together and sort of all the personalities of people that and like. But there's no way at home that you get the kind of experience that you get in an open or in an epic, where you're watching 50 tables playing together, or like in the epic, the Red War at Origins, everybody's involved in what's going on, and what's happening at one table is affecting what's happening at another, and that kind of thing. Having played in a whole bunch of these now, is a kind of D&D that you really can't get without being at a convention like that. And just to keep gushing about the open, having the sort of the pit bosses walking around in their Waterdavian guard outfits, with their cudgels over their shoulders. And like every time they'd walk by your table, everybody would shut up about whatever plan they had, or they would immediately start just making up a story. And some people were bribing them with donuts, and it was hysterical, right? And that kind of stuff, that sort of almost LARPing, it was like bringing the D&D group into the LARPing world by, having these guards they'd sneak around and kind of look over his shoulder. That was, that kind of stuff just you can't capture that anywhere. Anybody who has the option to be able to go to a convention and play in an epic or an open like that. And now I'm going to share my favorite moment of the Red War.
Oh no!
In which, so here I am. We're playing the Red War. We are fighting all kinds of stuff, and we finished our little section of it early. And it's a little late in the day, and I kind of wanted my I get grumpy if I don't get my afternoon coffee. And I look over, and there's Lysa with her red robe on and a red hood over.
The hood was up.
It was up, but
very
I
important.
didn't catch the subtlety. I don't pick up on subtleties. And I walk over and I said, "Hey, Lysa, do I have time to go run over and get a coffee before the next section of it?" And she looks at me, eyes narrowed, and says, "Your group is attacked by 2 red wizards of Thay and a blackguard." And I look at her, and my whole table is staring at me like, "You bastard." And like 2 red wizards and a blackguard. And we killed them, and then I went and got my coffee.
You earned it, Mike. You earned your coffee.
Say, and no offense to the people who ran the Red War and wrote the Red War, it's really the only thing I remember about the Red War.
No.
Other than I think we saved a bunch of people from red wizards. I think that occurred. But that, so those sort of experiences, that really, really fun times. And I think that the most positive things that I find at sessions like that is that ability to watch 50 players, 50 groups playing simultaneously in one situation and interacting with one another like that.
Yeah, that's such a good answer. The energy of epics is like unreal. Yeah, everything feels like it's the most important battle you've ever had, and those are a blast.
Yeah, and I just remember, now I've played in a whole bunch, and again, Teos Abadia wrote one, and James Sitter-Casso wrote one, and I think it was a couple seasons ago. It was the Tomb of Annihilation one, and I just remember like they sort of have these. I forget what they're called, but essentially like an admin type who will run around from table to table doing something, right? And like throwing red wizards and blackguards at people when they're bored. But in that case, it was like the wall of a room would explode and a Tyrannosaurus would attack you. And it was so chaotic. And I just remember like one of the guys at the table, the poor guy, who just like, he was definitely a grid combat dude. And, kind of like had been playing forever. And when the guy came over and is like, "You're attacked by a Tyrannosaurus Rex," he's like, "Ah!" Like, what are you talking about? He's looking at the map for the minute. He's like, "There's no Tyrannosaurus Rex." And the guy's like, "What do you do?" And he's like, "I don't know." And the dude kind of was so outside of his like comfort zone when it came to playing a D&D game. And he figured it out, and we all got through. And that's where my character was killed and turned into he was the first character killed by a Sararak. And turned the first one whose soul was picked up by the soulmonger in the world, I think.
Oh, wow.
It was announced from the balcony when hundreds of people. So that was a real long-winded answer to that question.
Great one.
So we have hit our hour. Lysa, I know, flew by, right?
Yeah.
Would you like to talk more about gold and
Oh no, well I don't want to keep you.
Right. I really appreciate you coming onto the show. I'm a huge fan of yours. It was absolute pleasure to meet you at Origins, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at future conventions. You are a real shining star in this community, and you're doing a lot of fantastic work in all of your jobs. And hearing that you are the coordinator for the DMs Guild on top of the Adventures League, I don't know how you're going to do it. That's a whole lot. But I think it's fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
It's great to have you in the community, and I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this really big and interesting shift that we're going to see in Adventures League.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say I had a lot of fun chatting with you, and thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll have you back again. Well, in a year we'll be like, wow, what a big mistake that was, huh?
I hope not. Goodness.
Right. No, I think I'm really looking forward to it. I'm very excited to play in it. Rudy, as always, thank you for guarding over us and making sure that the none of the naysayers snuck in. And I want to thank everybody on Twitch who came live, and thanks to Wizards of the Coast for hosting our show. I looked down and we had 10 people following, and then all of a sudden it was 50. I'm like, wow, what happened? What did we start talking about that got everybody excited? So that was cool. Oh, a kitty. Oh,
yeah, just made it to the end of the stream.
Yeah,
don't know where she was hiding.
Sometimes we have foster cats that wander by when I'm doing a stream. So yeah, want to thank you again, and thanks to everybody who came on Twitch, and thanks to all of you who are watching on YouTube later. Yeah, oh, that's awesome. We get it.
I've got this cat wipe in for the end.
Yes, done. 9 o'clock, you're done. 9 o'clock pats.
Yeah.
So I think that's a fantastic way to end the show. So thank you very much, everybody, and we will see you on the next episode of the DM's Deep Dive.
Bye.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to tune in on Tuesday at 1 o'clock Eastern, and we'll be having the next session of the Demon Plague Actual Play podcast. Have a great night.